All right, so good morning, everyone. We're Devious, Bryce and myself. We're going to split this up in two forms. So Bryce is going to start us off talking about the tech stuff, and then I'll come out and ramble at you guys about the social things that we've learned in the last 5 years once he's finished.
Good morning. We are Devious, the free OpenBSD shell provider and online bug user group. Isn't that redundant?
Close enough.
And these are the lessons we've learned over the last 5 years or so. An overview. We have over 5,000 users, of which 4,000 have been active in the last 60 days and over 500 in the last... Okay, nice typo, Bryce. Sorry about that. In that time, in our 5 years, we have seen almost 18,000 applications. And we've rejected about 2/3 of them for a variety of reasons, and we'll touch on that later. Of course, running a shell, a public shell, does come with some miscreants. We've had to suspend some accounts, and you can see 177 is the number last updated. A brief history. A while back, Devious was founded by Daniel Salons. Originally, he had a shell provider that he built out of some old DEC alpha boxes and some Spark boxes. And that was his passion project back around 2003. That was called evicted.net, if anyone happens to remember that. Probably not. It was a local shell provider running on an ISDN line in the Orlando area. Eventually, Dan went to work for a data center where he got to talk with other like-minded individuals, and they started coming up with ideas to restart the shell business. And that culminated in 2010 when he and a buddy of his, Jared, name escapes me, started Devious. They hacked it out in a weekend, and next thing you know, on Monday it goes live. They start posting a link to Devious on various websites such as Undeadly. And the rest is history. It went viral in a sense. It was word of mouth beyond that initial link, and other people, of course, shared it to Reddit and Facebook. And so anyways, that brings us to here, to where we are now. Why does Devious matter? What have we done? Well, one of our happiest little achievements is that we were the SQLite build and test host for the OpenBSD platform. A number of people have joined in the community aspect, getting jobs, meeting friends, and encouraging new developers. For instance, Brian, he became an OpenBSD developer. We've had others. As far as jobs go, I myself got my current job through a contact I made on Devious. So it's been great. This is our current hardware. It doesn't take much. This is just an old server that they had laying around, someone's scrap, from, it's about 2002 era hardware, in fact. I could be wrong on that. So as you can see, we run about 5,000 users on just 2 gigs of RAM and a 32-bit 2.8 gigahertz processor. And you know what? It does quite well. It handles the load fine. A lot of people are surprised to learn that we're not running on a VPS or running in another virtualized scenario. And the reason is quite simple, because we had free hardware and because hardware, when you can, is better. Of course, 5,000 users is going to grow, and that box is not going to be able to handle 10,000, 20,000 users. So we are always looking to the future. We have experimented and explored ideas for running on Spark 64 boxes, for instance, and yeah, not a lot more to say about that right now. And that being said, we do all have backup machines and backups of data. So should our main server go down for an extended period of time and we cannot bring it back, we'll bring something back some other way. We currently run OpenBSD 5.7, which is the current stable release. In a few months here, we'll upgrade to 5.8, of course. We would like to run current and be a little more active in OpenBSD development, testing patches, that sort of thing. But of course, we also have to balance that with being a stable provider. So, simply put, users get cranky when you reboot the box and crash it daily. In order to keep up to date, though, we do use mTier's open up and their bin patches, and we really appreciate that they put those out. Those are immensely valuable to us. As far as packages go, we use anything, or we try and use anything that is packaged already, whether that be a pre-built package or something that gets built from ports. As long as it can be tracked by package info or the other package tools, we use it that way because that makes management simple. If you have untracked software installed, good luck upgrading it. Good luck remembering that you have it installed in the first place. So, to begin some of our lessons here. Web servers. Yes, we use Apache. We use the OpenBSD Apache 1.3 package specifically. We would love to use HTTPD or Nginx, but those just don't work for our needs. As you can see on the slide there, the main reasons that we cannot use those is the lack of dynamic virtual hosts. We offer our users user.devious, and without some fancy rewriting rules, that gets a little difficult in Nginx. And that's just not really doable without an insanely long configuration in base HTTPD, and becomes difficult to manage and remove entries if needed. The other and the even bigger point is we use suexec, which is only in OpenBSD's Apache. We use this to keep every user localized to themselves. They can always stab themselves, but they can't stab other users or shoot themselves in the foot for that matter. And finally, we use PHP through suexec as an executable, as a CGI. Reason for this being, again, it doesn't scale if we're trying to keep this running as one per user. The way FastCGI or PHP-FEM works, you need to have a socket for every instance, and that would therefore require 5,728 or so instances of PHP-FPM running, or PHP FastCGI. Just not going to cut it. And speaking of open file descriptors, that brings me to the other point. This is a shortcoming that we're going to work on. We're going to fix it eventually. But we want to give individual users individual logs for their web access. As it is, just the way that base HTTPD would work, or I mean any Apache or similar, it would keep open 5,728 or so file handles times 2 for access and error log. So that's just a shortcoming that we've learned about. We know of a couple of ways we're going to address it, just haven't gotten to it yet. Email. Email is another big use of Devious. People like having a Devious email address almost as much as they like having a openbsd.org alias. And many users point their openbsd.org alias at Devious for that matter. To accommodate email, we use postfix for message delivery. We use mavis and clamav for scanning, because goodness knows we get a lot of spam. We're kind of a target that way. And yeah, we would like to use OpenSMTPD someday. Personally, I love it. It's just a bit tricky to get working with sort of that three-way scenario where you have mail coming in, mail going out, and then users authenticating to send mail out as well. Other forms of communication. There's the classic talk. You can talk to other users, you can write them, And if you don't want to hear from other users, message off. I'll point out root account has message off, so please don't write the root account. Wall is good. That's all. And IRC. IRC has been a tremendous cornerstone to Devious. Not only are we a shell server, but we are a community online. So the admins communicate and coordinate online because we are far widespread. And our users do too. And they come up with ideas, they help each other out with problems, and they just shoot the breeze too. How to get devious. We offer SSH as you would expect any shell provider to do so. We have a website, again, you would expect that. Email, where we're using Dovecot for IMAP access and Postfix for our SMTP. We offer Gopher. Now, who doesn't love Gopher? I enjoyed the murmurs out there, thank you. Gopher is good stuff. We like to see the classics, I guess. We like to imagine ourselves as being retro while at the same time current. So offering Gopher, offering public Gopher holes, we're actually seeing users make use of that and a small revival of Gopher. So kudos to our users who use Gopher. And finally, not Telnet, just no. The nitty-gritty, the day-to-day of OpenBSD, how we keep it running. We have our own little scripts. We use OpenBSD's own tools too. OpenBSD has a lot of great tools. And OpenBSD, I should add, has already solved a lot of the problems that we would have. For instance, firewalling. Firewalling is great. Who doesn't love PF? I love PF. We use spamd blacklisting. We have whitelisting. We have basic blocks, as everyone should. We learned very early on that users will try and use us as a distributed compiler host. That was a bit surprising. I mean, we expected proxying and the like, but just CC. Go figure. So we nipped that in the bud. And finally, rate limiting. As I say on the slide there, I really hate people cluttering up my logs, and I thank you to the NetBSD presenter yesterday with BlacklistD. That gives us some interesting ideas for what we can do there too. So as I mentioned earlier, we use OpenBSD's own tools. We use login classes, we use quotas, we use our own tools on top of that stuff to police that. Login classes, we have two, one for our non-premium users and one for our premium users. Premium users are allowed to use a few more resources. They're allowed to leave a process detached while they disconnect and go elsewhere. Our shifty, as the group is called, users, the non-premium devious shifty, they are not allowed to detach processes. They are not allowed to use as many resources. For that detaching, we use a daemon that we wrote called background daemon, BGKD. BGKD was originally a Perl script. It has since been rewritten a couple of times, and it's currently in Python. It, as you can see, it polls the system. It looks at all the processes that are running. It checks to see if a process's owner user is connected, and if they're not, it starts the 5-minute timer. They have 5 minutes in case they were disconnected, or they're just changing IPs or similar. I mean, we're not monsters sometimes. So after 5 minutes, that process is killed and an email is sent out. And we, the admins, keep tabs on that. If we see a user serially abusing that, if they're trying to run a background process, we'll contact them. We'll take the relevant action. But we're also pretty understanding if they're having connection issues. So it is only interpreted by a human so that we can make that decision rather than upset the users needlessly. The other daemon that we have written is DVSD. It handles the back end of things, does the heavy lifting, and it runs with root privileges completely separated from the web server for obvious reasons, privilege separation. Not much to say about it. It uses a database, and it's what adds and removes and suspends accounts as needed. As I mentioned earlier, like any sysadmin, we have our own scripts that we've written to do various basic tasks. In addition to that, we use the scripts that OpenBSD offers, such as daily.local. Well, it offers daily. We write daily.local, and I keep an eye on that. In addition to keeping an eye on the system health from day to day, which includes things like quota usage, who's over quota, if there are any M-tier packages to be updated. We also use several monitoring platforms or solutions. We use Munin on the box to graph. We use Monit on the box to monitor what services are running, that they are running, etc. And of course, we use mmonit, which is sort of the parent to that, and it keeps an eye. It's run on a separate location. It keeps an eye on Devious to make sure that Monit is running, and if it doesn't, there's a heartbeat that check will fail. I do believe that this brings us to Brian, is that right?
Sounds good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Brian.
All right, guys. One thing I forgot to mention when I came up here to introduce us is I always see my slides, and if you've seen me talk at Nicebug or CDBug or BSDcon or whatever, I very much view these as dialogues. So we'll have questions at the end if you want, but if people just have questions, just shout them out to me. You know, I'm doing my part of the dialogue, so you guys shouldn't be afraid to do your part of the dialogue. So all the tech stuff is great. You know, it does keep Devious running day to day. But honestly, community, in my opinion, is where it's at. Because all that work we do to keep the box running, to make everybody happy, doesn't really mean much unless we have people who are there to actually take advantage of it and be happy that it's there, and get new people to come in and continue that cycle. So I really want to focus on what makes our community unique, why Devious has been around for as long as it has been growing since its foundation, and really is continuing to grow. And I think in the next 5 years, you know, we can come back here and tell you, oh, and we now have 12,000, 13,000 users or whatever it might be. So it's partially a celebration to talk about, you know, actually the really good things that I think Devious has done, but also to critique a little bit, think about mistakes we've made, things we could do better. There's always something that you can do better, and really kind of brainstorm with all of you what's really next for us. So the first thing, of course, is we tend to, when we probably shouldn't, think of the people who are Devious as people who physically have accounts. Because we do have people who just sit around in IRC and say, you know, I don't want an account at Devious. You know, I actually just like the community. I want to hang out in IRC. I think everyone here is really cool and I learn stuff. And we need to do a better job at really embracing those people as well. But let's say that you want an account. The original process was you went onto our website, there's a sign-up sheet, you fill out the form, you send it to us, and then we accept or reject you, depending on what you write back to us. So you still have to fill out that form, although we've added a few questions, and I'll show you the questions on the next slide. But the more recent thing is we've really taken the IRC as being the focus and really the point of the community where everybody knows each other and everybody gathers. So we ask people before they fill out the form to come on the IRC, to say hello, to really start to integrate themselves within the Devious community before they actually can ultimately sign up and get an account. Or at least, at the minimum, you can fool us into thinking that you're an interesting AI who can also fill out the form. So I'm just going to pull up what our sign-up looks like to show you all. It's really very simple. It's only like 6 questions. And then you can rejoice afterwards. So we are looking for a real name, mostly because that does, as we found, make a community useful. Now there are, of course, with everything, exceptions. You know, there are definitely some people, and I'll touch on it later, for whom a first and last name is totally not going to be okay for any multitude of reasons. But for the most part, and for most people, sharing who you are with the community by the time you get to the point of really entering this stuff in, we kind of already know who you are. So it's not, in my opinion, a super private thing that you're releasing. You do need to send us an email address, because if you get an account, we send you your auto-generated password to that email address. And it is one way that, like, if you lose your password or if you have other questions about us, we identify you by that initial sign-up email. So for some reason, and a lot of users don't, I think about this, is if you lose access to the email from which you signed up for, send us an email to our admins telling us what we should change that to. So in case anything happens, we can figure out who you are and make sure that it's actually the person asking for the account. Your username, very easy. If you happen to pick a username that's already chosen, then what just happened?
Barely full screen didn't stop.
So if you pick a username that already exists, it'll just come back to you and say you need to choose another one. We do not offer username changes. So make sure you are happy with whatever it is when you sign up, because we do actually check to make sure people don't have multiple accounts. So off the bat, make sure that you'll be happy with this 5, 10, whatever, how many years down the line. What shell you have, because we actually have the bot that sets up the accounts. So you get your whole pick of shells. Don't pick the default. If you all look at the default, it should be pretty obvious that if you pick that, you probably can't log in. So it's a guaranteed way to not get an account. And we just kind of asked how you heard about us. We're really also just interested at the bottom, like what you're going to use the account for. So there are some things that we just don't let people use. Like if you're here to, do an IRC bouncer, we're not the place for you. We're just not. We are not interested in helping you break out the Great Firewall of China because we just don't have the resources to do that. We're not interested if you're bored at work and want to watch YouTube videos. There are other services you can use to do that. This is really a community-based service. And the big question in the middle of those two, that's the new one, is who in IRC did you talk to and who will vouch for you? Now, vouching is pretty minimal. But again, the idea is by the time you're ready to fill out this form, you're already in the process of finding your identity and who you are within Devious as the broader community. So this question should be very, very easy because you could probably pick anyone who's an active chatter in IRC and we'll know based on everything else you filled out who you actually are. Although amazingly, that question still gets what I think are the funniest responses because people will do things like they'll just look at the user list and pick somebody at random, like someone who's idled for the last 5 years and never spoken. People think that we're asking for their IRC handles, so we just get random IRC handles. People like to put Obama in for this one a lot. One person said their parents, which left me confused for about 5 minutes. It's like, do they talk to their parents on IRC? Are their parents on IRC? Do we know them? But this is really it. This is the entire form. This is all you actually need to fill out to become part of Devious. All right, so you submit the application. So what comes next? Usually most people hang out in IRC while the application's being processed. The hidden, quote unquote, IRC channel for admins will get notified that someone sent an application in. The admins get notified by email. So we have different ways of knowing that one comes in. And we get a brief overview, not quite the entire thing, but a little overview of some of the answers to some of the questions. And we still look over every last application by hand. There's not a single application that went through a bot, didn't get talked out by the admins. And if one is pretty close, we're not really sure if this is somebody who really would be an asset to the community, we actually do sometimes fight over whether or not this person should be part of the community. That definitely does happen. And I think that actually sets us off to be very unique from other shell services, because some of them are just, you telnet in, you type your username, congratulations, you have an account. Others, you send the person an email with just your username and your password and whatnot, and you just get an account. We're really looking to make a community. So we really think about who we want to be part of our community and how we can best grow our community. So we still do meet out every last application. So that's now, almost 20,000 applications that have been looked over by hand. Question?
What's the weekly rate for that?
Probably about 10. So we get a little more than one a day. Yeah. So eventually, we have to go on to our little admin webpage that only we can get into. We have two big buttons. We have accept and reject. And somebody has to physically go and click accept or reject so that we can either send out a welcome to Devious email or a sorry, we've rejected you email. So no matter what, you'll hear back from us through the email that you send with your application. So why does this matter? So again, the advantage really is we are creating the community that we feel is best to both present us as Devious and really kind of BSD as the larger idea. Because ultimately Devious, not that we are a BSD project, but we are obviously not, but if we're going to be a bug, we need to act like a bug. And one of those things that bugs do is really promote the projects as best that we can. And that's really the benefit we see to our process to bringing new people into Devious. The disadvantage, of course, is sometimes this takes a long time, and we're totally at fault for this. We have had applications sit there and rot for 2 weeks for absolutely no good reason. And it's something we should be more aware of and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So there are people out there who have applications and are upset with us that it took 2 weeks to get back to you. Sorry, ultimately it's a human process, and ultimately we do the best we can, but nothing can ever be perfect, but it doesn't mean we don't aspire to get a little more perfect. Things you might change in the future, that's a hard one, because I still think the process of manually looking at every application is a good one, and something that we should keep. We have a script that kind of checks the application and sees if it's like bot generated or somehow is otherwise filled with garbage. It's not perfect, and it definitely does obscure both legitimate applications and illegitimate applications get through. So there's probably some work we can do to help us fix the speed in which we get back to people's applications. So this is how you don't inspire confidence in the administrators. These are real reasons that people have used to try to get an account, all of which has been rejected. So if you tell people that you're not going to do anything illegal, it's almost like a red flag that eventually you're going to do something illegal. So it's not any games we want to play. Legal things, the same thing. And just because something's legal doesn't mean it necessarily aligns with Devious goals. So legally, you can run an egg drop, but we don't want people doing that on Devious. Legally, you can run a Minecraft server, but first of all, we don't even have Java, so good luck to you. And second of all, that's a surefire way to bring a box down really, really quickly with 1,500 or whatever it is Minecraft servers all running. Somebody apparently is an A-Team fan and wrote "I Pity the Fool," so guest cameo by Mr. T. No, we will not let you use torrents. First of all, the free users only get 100 megabits, so good luck trying to torrent anything you actually want to torrent. But it turns out we too, don't want to have the worry of people downloading illegal things off the internet. Again, we're not interested in people bypassing the company firewall. Linux is a very popular reason people give, and that's great. We're really thrilled that you want to learn Linux. It's just not going to be possible on an OpenBSD box. Yeah. So if anyone here wants an account and you write Linux, we will reject you. So just keep that in mind. Try it, see what happens. Playing Minecraft in the school, again, we're not really here to see people break out of whatever firewalls they're behind. Somebody simply wrote no. Which, okay, no, so you don't get an account. Apparently people, Bryce said, we like to be retro but modern. That hosting your old GeoCity site is just staying retro. We kind of want to get to the modern thing. Unfortunately for us, we don't actually go through the database for the signups, so you can't try to screw us by writing things like drop tables. It won't work. So once you finally become one of us, it really opens the door to a whole bunch of other side communities that we have. So we have a Twitter account. It's @Wolfman. It's really fun come Halloween time when everyone talks about vampires and wolfmen. We suddenly get tons of followers and mentions. We kind of just would hope that they look at our bio, though, and think, hey, shell service, that sounds cool. What's this OpenBSD thing? Let's go find out. For those of you who use app.net, which is a Twitter-like service, I think we're just Devious on there, but we might be Wolfman. I don't remember. Shows you how often I actually post from these, if I don't remember our account. A bunch of users have Fitbits, and they have to compete with each other, how many steps they take each day. That's always fun. We have a Google Plus group. For the music lovers, we have a Last.fm group. We have, I'm pretty sure, a defunct Steam group now. I don't think anyone actually uses it. Telegram, which I feel like I'm going to have to explain because everyone I've mentioned it to here has stared at me like I'm nuts, like we're back in the 1890s. Telegram's just another mobile and desktop messaging service. That's all it is. And of course, IRC, which is our main community. As we add more places that we have a presence in, that shows up on our website, devious/communities, so you can always see where we're branching out to. If you see that guy, that's Wolfman, that's our logo. it means you found us. Very easy. You know, I found out the other day that they actually paid for this. I thought it was just like one of their kids who drew this logo, but they actually paid someone. This was like stock art somewhere. So I don't know how I feel about it. We might have to make a new logo. So chatting on IRC. So other than IRC being really like the entry point, so usually people show up on IRC and they say, hey, I went to your website, I want a shell account, what do I have to do, who do I have to talk to? It's really not the way it's supposed to go. But eventually people who end up getting accounts like kind of learn that, you know, they need to be part of the community, and then they become ready really to get an account. And I think that's, you know, an individual thing. At some point they feel ready, like they know enough people, they get what we're about, and they're ready to get an account. But IRC, you know, like I said, really is the main focus of the community. So we have a lot of services that we offer on IRC, mostly through our bots. So one thing that I always like is, if you're an OpenBSD developer who's active on Devious, every commit you make will get blasted to the channel. When OpenBSD releases new snapshots, that will get blasted to the channel. And of course, we have good times, because who doesn't have good times on IRC? So what I think doing that with the community, with IRC, and everywhere else we are, what it does really well, it brings in new people who actually want to be a part of something and who actually want to put and have ownership in Devious, both the service and the community. And I think that's vital for having a surviving shell provider. You know, I really think the only reason that we're here 5 years later and can give this talk is because we figured out how to bring in the best people who really feel like they belong here and they have an ownership stake here and are really willing to do what it takes to keep that community going. It also creates an environment that encourages dev work. So, you know, if every day you're seeing commits being made to OpenBSD, if you're seeing snapshots be announced to OpenBSD, and we do it for every platform, so even the obscure ones that no one even owns, you know, hardware for, you'll still get notified about it. It does inspire people to start thinking to themselves, hey, you know, I bet I can do that too. And we've had many users who are the whole scale, you know, they come in with, I just want a shell account and I guess I'll hang out in IRC because you're making me, to, oh, this OpenBSD thing is kind of cool, maybe I'll run it on my machine, to, I have this port that's outdated, but I kind of want to run the latest version because Linux or FreeBSD or whatever else they're running happens to have it, and then helping them through those early stages to really generate their first diff and send it off. You know, and we've had people come in like that and now are developers. So that's definitely a thing that happens, and that's the thing that I think we should encourage both as a bug and as a shell provider. And that's what you get from when you make a community. So things we can do better. So for those of you who know me and are friends with me, you know, as Rick said, I'm a PhD student. So I'm actually an anthropologist, I'm an ethnographer. So I actually study cultures and people. And specifically, I'm interested in the diversity issue and bringing marginalized voices into the center of open source. Because I fully believe that we as a community, both whether you want to call it Devious, BSD at large, open source at large, we're missing out on a lot. You know, the fact, you know, I hate to point it out, but if you look around this room, you know, where are, you know, equal numbers of women? Where are equal numbers of minorities? Where are trans people, you know, so on and so forth. So there's a lot we're missing out on, and there's a lot of ways we can make our communities and BSD and open source better if we figure out how to get to these people and we figure out how to make them part of our community. And then the connections that they can bring will really be very fruitful for us. So that's something that I personally am very attached to and very sensitive to. And although, I mean, I'm not going to say anybody's names who's in Devious, I think people will be surprised to know what kinds of people we actually have in the community. And that kind of goes back a little bit to for some people, it is legitimate to not put in your real first and last name, and there are definitely exceptions we take there. But that's really not to pat ourselves on the back, because we're, you know, pretty much equally as poor as anyone else in open source. But at least we're aware of it. And the bugs, for the most part, too, are aware of it. And we're really trying to think through how we do better. And it doesn't come from one person, it comes from a community. It comes from reaching out, it comes from advertising, it comes from really making a space that others who would never think of coming to BSD or to Devious or even to open source feel like they can. I've personally had a few small successes that I'm really proud of, but they're only small successes. And, you know, working together, we really can do this one, I think. And I think we'll be much, much better for having done it. And another thing that we're really not great at is advocacy across the BSD spectrum. So we're really good at OpenBSD because that's what we started with. We're actually pretty okay with Bitrig. We have no Bitrig developers who hang out in Devious, but we do announce their snapshots. I kind of want to expand on this. I think anyone who's a BSD dev, doesn't matter what project you are, whether it's free, net, edge, hardened, next, if any of those people are here, whatever it is, if you're starting a BSD project, come to Devious, get to know us, and I don't see any reason why we can't do the same for you as we do for OpenBSD and Bitrig. Announcing when you make commits, announcing when you have new snapshots come out, whatever it is. Because the bugs that are really, really successful and the bugs that have been around for 10 years, that's what they excel at. They excel at being BSD agnostic, and that's what keeps them going. And that's what we're gonna have to do as Devious if we wanna come back here in 5 years and give another talk about all the things that we've done better in the last 5 years. So the future of our community. Anyone here who has an account on Devious or hangs on IRC or hangs on any of our communities, raise your hand. All right, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, Dan, there you go, 8. So congratulations. This is the world's largest in-person meetup of Devious users. So after this talk is over in the downtime, meet us outside by where they had the schedule up, because I want to take a picture of everyone, because I think that'll be really cool. But I think we should do more of this. More things get done when, as we know, when you come up as a group. And I think it'd be good for us to see each other face to face, because we talk a lot on IRC, and you feel like you get to know people over IRC, but then you really get to know people when you all hang out together. Of course, Devious being all over the world, it's difficult, but we can hope, right? And then reaching out to all the BSD projects. Like I said, money's never going to be a thing we can offer because you don't make money doing Devious. But advocacy is definitely a thing that we can do. And we should be reaching out to the BSD projects, and the projects should reach out to us as well. So if there's something that we can do for you guys as Devious, do let us know. And we'd be happy to at least try, the best we can offer. So anyone in any BSD project who thinks that they can use Devious services for something, come talk to us. We're very happy to listen to you guys. So let's say you want to start a shell, but really, this is what I would call starting people-facing services. When you boil it down, it's pretty much everything we do in tech are people-facing services. But we'll just take shell accounts because it's something I know how to talk about. First of all, why? It seems crazy. Why would you want to spend all this time to put up a box to have other people essentially run rampant on your boxes? But actually, I think there's a lot of positives to doing it. And I actually do think that every BSD, from the smallest projects that are just getting off the ground, to the 4 major projects and beyond, they should all have shell providers that are at least as popular as Devious. There's no reason that we can't. And surprisingly, there just aren't other BSD shell providers. There's like 1 or 2 others. And one of them is like brand new. So first of all, what you should do is you should use a BSD. So in the last, really since Devious started, we've had 0 downtime that is a fault of the OS. We've had the data center give us tremendous amount of downtime. We've had DDoSes from China, which surprisingly, as bad as that was, the box actually did stay up. You just couldn't get to it. So it will help you do as little work as possible, which is actually what you want for a shell provider, and especially a shell provider that's interested in getting and making a community. Because all those things we have, like BGKD and DVSD and everything else we do, is great and all, and is needed, because every once in a while, someone who is trying to sabotage you will slip through the cracks. We're all human. Eventually, we accept somebody who's not someone we should have accepted. But if you have people who have ownership in what you're doing, they're not going to break your stuff, at least not intentionally. They're going to do everything in their power to keep themselves happy and to keep everyone else happy. So we've really found that the best way to ensure that your box stays up is have great people and have a great community. And that's what's going to make everything easy for you. So care a lot less about your tech. Tech ultimately doesn't matter. We could theoretically do this on almost any other OS. We choose to use OpenBSD because, again, it's never given us headaches, and I can't imagine those other OSs, wouldn't give us OS-related headaches. But when you care about your people, that's what's going to matter. Because ultimately, they are what matters. And they are the ones who are going to make it worthwhile, and they're the ones who are going to give you that sense of reward and pride from doing this work. So when you focus on your people, everything else will fall in line, and you'll really have both a great time doing it and a really successful story to tell at the end of it, or during it in our case. But keep in mind, this will never be you. You'll never be skiing down the mountains of gold. Devious actually is currently losing money because we currently don't have the apparatus to take premium accounts. I do hope we get back to that soon. So the owner of the box just pays out of pocket, every month to keep the box running, and he's happy to do it. And as long as he's happy to do it, we're happy to keep this community going. All right, so people have questions either on the tech side or on the social side, we're happy to take them. Can you come up to the mic just so I think they can hear you on the recording?
This is all mostly my own curiosity, but the 117 that you rejected, and also what kind of bad things do people do that really annoy you, and what kind of troubles did you go through in the last couple of years?
You want to take it? I have an answer, but you want to take it first?
Sure. So the 117 accounts that we have suspended so far have primarily been for sort of, let's see, we had a report from some Russian authority, for instance, that there was something we didn't want to be associated with. So we did have to remove that rather than follow legal course. Users running an IRC bouncer anyhow, that's been the largest cause for suspends.
Well, so there's one other thing with that 177 number. Unfortunately, it is really, really small, and that's awesome. But that number is actually inflated. So we must be the most privacy-aware shell provider in the world. If you do not want your account anymore, and you send us an email, then your account is gone, and that does actually add to that tally. So I would say probably like half to 2/3 of that number is people who have said, I've had a great time on Devious, it's time for me to do something else. I don't really want to have the service around, like just in case. Do you just mind deleting my account? Sure, no problem. Like, we're happy to do it. It's just the way that we tally those statistics, they end up in that number. But yeah, so people don't need to feel like they've committed to Devious for their life. If it's time for you to move on, and you want to make sure that all your data goes with it, totally cool. Anybody else?
I'd also like to thank those who have reached out over Twitter and responded during the talk, and we'll catch up with that, I promise.
He will.
I will.
All right, thanks everybody.